Swige again ni Fradenya goes in your way to your Wenzadi. Tadina Gray Randa against the Guadina Gon Yadi. Sni Frati Saninga Tunya. Crate go was an honey diofito diohati. A tuni gonyak. Again ganyo tend to win your sons on Guadam White Wati de Wheatsta. Tanya Dagwati again said crate goa to our kinda. Senor Hon had you hati dagi. A gongwedi again to inagri. Guiand a dream. To hear go yado, so go hand. Jaco how we don't need. Again, we ain't one way neighbor to which is sondak. Sandy ha go yado henge. Hunga again at gatu. Do you once saw us a good yard again ha? To the no hadi wayage, dear good runda. Tian the again. Ha had no ye to Nicagon, Tata can to a hanho road, sweet age, Ganyatengo to Gasco gave Nicage. Scan on the turn die drawn da, Ganhiage diade. Ganyo di to a j drawn da, sweet again and Ganyatengo. Dia good kohenge again, good no da gani. Adwati taugo. Sanio we kwekondaka hoik sweet again and kanya tango. It took the again neo on Chow Manzadat. Sky Woman, our grandmother, as we know her, gave birth to a daughter, the mother of Haudenosaunee life as we know it today.
About a dream that I had last night. What prompted me to come here.
Scano Swatguego. Giaso Goenki.
My real name is Yayantos.
I'm Gakwini.
Gunwatun Daje.
Gaya Danis, that means falling doll.
My name is Janie Jameson.
Dale Hate.
I'm a Mohawk lady.
My Mohawk Bear clan name is Goenki.
My clan is Dewees, that's Killdeer.
Onondaga Eel clan.
Mohawk Turtle Clan.
The Mohawks, the Senecas, the Onondagas, the Cayugas, and the Oneidas.
We're Ongohoma people, we're Ganosays people, we're Longhouse people.
This is symbolism of the 5 nations, the original League of Nations. The other nations that came, Tuscaroras was one, that's how we became 6.
I was born here in the village of Ashwegan.
This is our homestead here.
My parents have always lived here. My grandparents have always lived here.
We have our chiefs and clan mothers, we have our people, we have our language, we have our own constitution.
It's the oldest democracy in the world, that Six Nations Confederacy.
Centuries before any European ever stepped foot on North America.
The Haldimand Deed is a deed that granted 6 miles on both sides of the Grand River from its mouth to its source that we were to enjoy forever.
We've settled not just here on this 9x12 piece of land that we have now. We lived at different places up along the river.
A lot of people believe that Six Nations Reserve 40 and 40B is our territory. And the reality is our our territory is vast. And so here we sit today, caught in the middle of one of the biggest lands issues that Canada's seen for a very long time.
Wants right now? Like, what are you aiming for? What would be a satisfactory resolution to your people at this point?
To have the land and title reinstated, and for the government, for Canada, to prove once and for all, either they have that title or they don't.
It's all over a piece of land in southwestern Ontario, land given to the Iroquois in the 18th century as a British thank you for helping them fight the Americans. Over decades, Canadian governments then sold it off. The Six Nations claim, rightfully, it's still theirs.
We are not protesters. We are Haudenosaunee. This is our land, we know it.
In the end, I want this land back to the Six Nations where it belongs. There's no other solution that is going to clear us out of here. We'll be squatters, just like all the Europeans that came over to this country and took our land in the first place.
In our way of thinking, that we all have responsibilities and obligations. The women's role, is to preserve for the future. And when decisions are made with respect to anything, a lot of people look to the women for that guidance, and that's what happened here. And why things are so different now is because the women have taken an active role. It was started by women. It was started and supported by clan mothers.
Why we're here is because of the land. When we saw this last little piece of land close to where we live, and it's only land, a little bit of land that surrounds us that we can now take for ours, we had no choice but to come in because they were building a housing project, I'm going to call it, because our ancestors looked after us as well as they did. I decided that I would do the same to protect down to we're taught the seventh generation. For phases to come, where was they going to live? They should enjoy what we've enjoyed at the very least.
Onondaga women are the keepers of the land, and we're responsible for it. We were the gardeners.
First of all, being a woman, we have a responsibility to our children, the future generations.
We're like Mother Earth. We're part of it. Mother Earth gives birth. We give birth, and we were trusted with that duty.
Guanoha, Mother Earth, is also a woman, so that would make sense in that we're title holders to the land, eh?
They say title holders. They use that word. I don't really like that word because title was a British term in land holding. It's more that as women we looked after the land, we took care of the land. There was never any concept of ownership.
Part of that is ensuring that we haven't covered the earth in cement and townhouses and parking lots, and that we've protected the waters, and that the connection with the earth is the same as the connection with everything else in creation, because we're all one.
Like, without a doubt, in our society, anything to do with life falls on the women's shoulders. Whether it's plant life, animal life, human life, it's always up to the women to nurture that in any way, shape, or form that they can. So if there's a threat to that, it's up to the women to decide, like if there needs to be anything done to protect the families from that threat.
When you look at the history of this particular piece of land, this is what was referred to as Plank Road, and there was an agreement between the chiefs and, it was probably a very small town back then, but the agreement was that they could use this land for use of Plank Road, and that the lands on either side could be used for farming, and back then they used to call it Plow's Depth. They would lease the land as Plow's Depth, not to sell or surrender anything, but to lease. And so the whole thing and how it ended up becoming absorbed into Canada is through the practices of Indian affairs, and it's happened over and over again in our history. It's not a justifiable process, indeed, and it doesn't give the consensus of the people. It's through the Indian Act Council, which is an arm of the federal government, so it's the government granting itself our land. And so all of these things all up and down the Grand River have to be addressed, and this particular piece, including the whole town of Caledonia, is definitely under our jurisdiction.
At that time, at the reclamation, when things were just getting started, and it was the women who sat at the site and acknowledging their role. They were doing their role.
The beginning of the reclamation, and why I see it as such a spiritual thing, and why I see it as such an important role for the women, is because it was those two young women, Janie and Dawn, who first went to the councils and said, listen, can we do something?
They called the women, they'd have women's meetings. And we didn't really know even where they were going to reclaim. They said that they would let us know when the time came.
Well, I was here with them when they used to start. They started at the gate here. Then it was just an open highway, and they were holding up. They were just standing out there, and it was cold, really cold, and I pulled over and I stood with them and holding their signs, telling that this was Six Nations land.
Protesting, stealing our land, and building houses on it.
So then we approached both the traditional council here and the elected band council, and we asked for their support. We had told them we want this to be a unified effort from Six Nations.
And I don't think either of those young girls had any idea what it was going to turn into. Like they just wanted to do something to stop this,
But it just grew so big.
And the clan mothers themselves standing with the people was a very key and important issue, because they set the ground rules of how it was going to happen. We're going to do this according to our law. We're going to do it with peace. There are going to be no weapons. These are the rules that we're going to set in place.
Women play a huge role in governance. It's through the women that everything is channeled, through your clan, through the people. And that's how the governance is supposed to be. It's supposed to come up through the people, through the clan mother, to the chiefs. And the chiefs are then to counsel and make decisions, but based on what the people have said and based on the direction their clan mother has given them.
We're traditional longhouse, the Confederacy people are. We don't follow the father's side, and that's patriarchal, right? And this is a matriarchal society.
You see, a clan mother is in possession of the beads, which has spiritual and powerful meaning. And they're handed down as a clan mother passes away.
Ever since I was little, I've always known that the title was in our family. It's not like you were taught and all prepared for this. It's like you had to go out there and learn it yourself, and you had to seek the people to learn it from. Nobody would come and teach you. You had to take the initiative, and it was your responsibility to find out what you had to do and what your responsibilities were.
My role is simply to mother them, to be there, to listen.
the beginning, the men here were saying that they would take their direction from the clan mothers. Also to set some rules for conduct here. And when they're here, they're dealing with all kinds of issues, things that come up here that somebody has to make a decision about. They've been just kept very busy.
This is a lookout out there. We have a platform up there, so you can see everything. My role here is defending the people. I'm one of the few women that does security here. A long time ago, a lot of people don't know this part of history, that there were women warriors. When the men were away on a hunting trip, and if the village came under attack, they had to defend their family, right? The women did. We're peaceful people. We can settle this peacefully. But I'm telling you that if somebody threatens us, we're going to defend ourselves. We're not afraid of anyone. I pray to Sagwaidiso that I don't have to pick up a weapon and disobey my clan mother-in-chief. But if I have to, I will.
What are you asking for right now? What are you going to be asking the federal government on the 23rd and 24th?
Can you comment on that, please?
Security. I need security up here. No alcohol allowed on the premises, sir. See, that's what we're afraid of.
It's been months. How long do you think this is going to continue going on? And how long are your people prepared to be here?
Well, we've already survived bitter colds of winter, so we know that's not a problem. And we're here for as long as it takes, and we don't know how long that is right now.
Has your resolve been broken at all by any of these?
No. My focus has never changed, and it never will.
But the Haudenosaunee themselves have hundreds and hundreds of years since first contact of history and neglect of the treaties and that relationship with the crown that have been ignored. And so that's where we're at. We're way in the past trying to bring forward that relationship.
This river is of significance to our people. It was part of the Haudenosaunee Treaty, and that there's 6 miles on both sides of the river from its mouth to its source. So there's 1 million acres that we're talking about here. We never gave up anything. You know, there were leases, there were agreements made, and the towns that were created along the Grand River, you know, that were leased towns, all of a sudden they became cities, and there was, like, everything just seemed to be wiped out. You know, where was the accounting of all of those leases from government? How did that happen without our consent? You know, and how is all the developments that is occurring today where there's contested land claims, where there's contested land rights? You know, how are they able to develop along this Grand River still without consulting with our people?
Look at our waters, our lands, our beautiful Grand River. No one can swim in there, we can't fish in there. Or do we just sit there and watch that? What do we do? And it's not that we want to be rid of the non-natives. We just want to share in what's ours. We don't even want all that's ours. We want to share in what's ours. You know, we should be richer than the Trump man for rents overdue. And here we have people here that don't have running water and inside bathrooms yet. I don't think that anyone should expect us not to fight on.
We're trying to protect the lands and territories and the environment for our future. We have nowhere else to go. This is it.
The population is exploding. There's about 20,000 of us, and that's not including the ones that live off the territory. So we do need space, you know. Of course, they're calling us terrorists because they're trying to discredit us, right? As who we are, the Six Nations Confederacy. They clumped us in with Tamil Tigers and Hezbollah. And we're on to them about that, like it's how they're trying to invalidate us, who we are as people, Onondaga people.
Canada's government, federal and provincial, both representatives still look at us as if we're Canadians. They still haven't got it in their heads that we're not. No matter what nation you come from, whether it's the Haudenosaunee or Anishinaabe or whoever, like the Algonquins recently, those people, we can all relate as one because we're all Onondaga. We're people of the earth, the original people of the earth. We've had those prophecies here specifically that talked about a time when the world was going to be such a mess that it's on the brink of disaster on it because of itself, because of mankind, and that it was going to be the Onondaga that helped to bring back the teachings to the other nations so that they would understand, you know, it's not all about money, it's not about progress in the sense that they view it.
There's just so much that's been put into what's gone on at Douglas Creek Estates, and a lot of corporate non-natives look at that tract of land and think, what a waste. You know, they're not doing anything with it. There could have been hundreds of homes up there right now. You know, there could have been prosperity. When we consider what prosperity means to them and what prosperity means to us as Onondaga people, two totally clashing perspectives. You know, prosperity to us isn't money. It's not trying to squeeze as many taxpayers as you can in the smallest area. You know, it's not bringing in more development. When we stood up and said no at Douglas Creek Estates, it was saying no to their thought that we don't matter. You know, they don't have to consult with us for anything. It was saying no to destroying the earth.
The protesters were asked to leave. They didn't. A highway was blocked and the battle broadened.
It was the clan mothers that were at the site that made the decision to stay there when the chiefs had ordered people to leave. And Carol and I were two of the clan mothers that were there and made that decision. And so that's what kept us there, because if we didn't make that decision, if we had listened to the chiefs at that point, we would have left.
We're the one who asked us. We're not here for controversy even. We're here to just reclaim what is ours. I think we were called here. And I believe that's why it has kept us here. The land is in our hearts and in our souls. We're all getting a glimpse of who we should be. We know what we have been, but I think we're realizing that there's more for us to know.
We gathered there, and there was some of the clan mothers, and when we gathered at the fire and we talked about things, we just talked at first, but then we all stood and we made that commitment to the Creator that we're going to do whatever it takes. You know, we're here to do what you've put us on this earth to do as women, as protectors of the future of our kids, and that to me was when things really started to move.
They've basically surrounded the perimeter, blocked all entrances, and just come in at every angle they could.
This is where I was, and I remember the police were right up here. And I come walking up, and I stood right there in front of her, like that. She said, "You're trespassing, move back."
When that raid happened, there were 2 snipers hiding by this tree here.
It took maybe 10 minutes, to gather hundreds of our people here to stand strong.
They put me on my knees on the ground.
He shot me. Yeah, here's the taser right here.
The woman police came up to me and she said, because of my gray hair, I suppose, she said, you'd better leave because you could be hurt. And I looked her straight in the eye and I said, well, it's a good day to die. And they didn't take into consideration that this was a peaceful thing. We wasn't here to shoot them or harm them in any way, but we were determined that we were going to go in.
We started walking from that back corner all across the field, and we just come back onto the property.
It was just sheer people power, that pushed them off.
So I don't know why they needed all those police.
Well, they just thought they were going to get us out, and they couldn't.
Today, the county's mayor appeared on the CBC to try to explain the anger of people worried about their jobs.
Get paid, then they can't pay their mortgages and they lose their homes. They don't have money's coming in automatically every month.
So how do my people have money coming in automatically?
Well, I'm sure they...
How? Answer that. I'm shocked at you, and I will never want to address you again.
At the barricades, ugly exchanges between natives and nearby town residents. A community divided.
The biggest thing that I would like, and a lot of the residents would like, is law and order.
Watch being arrested.
How come they're allowed down here?
We can't
You hate to say it, but you'd almost think it's trickery that they do to us. Why are you causing this disturbance? The real issue is never put on the table. It's always, you're a few troublemakers, or why are you doing this? You've got a good life. Nobody's disturbing you. The issue is that we have the right to live a life that we want.
Ottawa said the land was purchased. Native leaders said, and still say, the land was leased, and no one's been paying rent.
They've been taking the lease money and using that for too long now.
Any historical document we've seen has always maintained this land was for lease only.
Janie,
it goes against who we are.
Janie, I just want to ask, did these protesters act with the sanction of Six Nations leadership or not?
Yes, we do.
So it is.
And the leadership we follow is our traditional form of governance, which is the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, who were forcibly removed by gunpoint in 1924 by the RCMP. That's who we're here under the governance of, our chiefs and our clan mothers.
Leroy Hill is an unelected hereditary chief of the Confederate government. He says he is one of the true leaders of the Six Nations Reserve, which brings us to the next big confrontation. In 1924, Prime Minister Mackenzie King tired of quarreling with the chiefs. He set up an elected band council.
They sent the RCMP in here to arrest our people and remove them and impose the Indian Act system. I'm part of that system.
Because she is an elected councillor, one of 7 who voted just last week to step back and force the federal government to deal with the Confederate chiefs for the first time in 80 years. The chiefs have tried to force the issue themselves. Here in 1959, Ottawa responded again with the Mounties and with force.
I was up at the front of the council house when my brothers were sitting behind me. We knew the RCMP were coming, And we were all in there. The people were in the seats, and the chiefs were up at the front, and people were all, fighting back, sort of. And like the reclamation, it wasn't a fearful thing. It was a determined thing.
Eurocentric cultures. We were told last night by some of the academics in our community that they wanted to get rid of the petticoat government in here. Right? That's what they call it, a petticoat. Well, that it was actually, run by women to a certain degree. The women selected the leaders, and so they wanted to distinguish that. Right? And that's what they did.
Our traditional ways is that the women do have a decision and they make the decisions, but then it's carried to the men to carry these decisions out. So it's like that, just running a household means the same thing. And running our country means the same thing. You can't run a country on just men say so, because they can't even design a kitchen properly. They can't even design a house properly. So how can they design a country and run a country without women's input and everything else? And it should be that way. You have to look at the ripple effects that it's going to have on the children and what is best for them and for all the future generations. So that is what women, I think, do best.
What was the year when the North American government let the woman vote, white woman vote? They didn't think they were human, so they couldn't vote because only the men were human. Like that system is what's reigning, over all of us. And then a lot of years later, before they let Native people vote, so they're just not balanced. There's just no balance in the European way.
What the Creator has said about women was that, they're inherent natural leaders, they're decision makers. Our traditions and our culture was based on balance, on respect for each other as human beings. When you think about the early colonizers, white women were considered property of men. That whole way of thinking was not how our people thought about each other.
When they came over on their boats, they were chattel. Like, goodness me, they couldn't vote. They couldn't, had to bow down to their husbands and be servants to them or whatever. We didn't know that kind of life for our people. Our women were respected, and our male knew who was the giver of life, the keeper of the earth, and they respected that.
The early feminists also studied our women, the Iroquois Haudenosaunee women, and studied how they already had equality. There was already inherent equality in our culture.
Women play many roles in our society. When you consider the way our houses were structured, it was all based on the women's family, like a matriarchal society. The Indian Act tears that apart totally and completely by basing everything on the men.
I studied this. I studied how they created the Indian Act. We're going to decide who an Indian is. And an Indian is a man, a woman who is married to that man, and children of that man. And so that's what created the first process of eliminating women's roles and forcefully displacing them from the connections to their lands and territories.
that does not have injustice in its history.
If the Indians have some kind of a land claim that they claim that they, you know what? Have you actually seen? Have you actually seen the treaty?
My kids came home from school last Thursday, terrified. I did not impose this on my children. I did not speak to them about this issue. They came home terrified of going outside of their own home. Why are we against Canadians? We should be against the Canadian government for not resolving this.
If they want to protest Douglas Estates, get on Douglas Estates, get off the highway.
These Indians have all said that they're not Canadian. If people are not Canadian, then they're bloody terrorists, okay? Because they're homophones. They are Canadian, they're criminals.
All I'm saying is, taking a bulldozer and driving through there isn't going to resolve anything, okay? They're going to come right back.
Guswenta, River of Life, is what Guswenta means. This is the two-row wampum. So this would represent the colonizer's ship, which holds their laws, their culture, their beliefs, their tradition, whatever made them who they are. And we live in our canoe as our laws, our beliefs, our culture, our way of being. And there's 3 white lines, which meant peace, trust, and friendship. And so we live in this river of life together with those values and those principles. It's very basic, but also very powerful, because we weren't supposed to cross. We weren't supposed to impose our beliefs, our laws on each other. Under Canadian rule of law, they're arguing that we're not abiding by their rule of law. Because we're protecting our lands and territories, all of a sudden the people who are abiding by our rule of law are now criminalized in their rule of law. So then we're the ones that look like the bad guys in Canadian society, because there's no understanding of this history. We're trying to maintain our rule of law by protecting our lands and territories for our future generations, by protecting the environment for future generations, for everybody. And there's people who have died, people who have been killed in our territories to protect that same thing. Or they're in jail today, or they're criminalized within their system. And so that to me is, the whole frustrating part of this whole process is understanding, well, whose rule of law are we talking about here?
If we didn't take this action here, I don't believe that the government would have recognized the Confederacy. So this was a huge step for us. It's historic. So they're at the negotiating tables now and dealing with the federal government and the provincial government on a nation-to-nation basis, the way it should be.
I think that when it happened that everybody woke up on this reserve, we woke everybody up. It was an awakening, it really was. And it was really nice to see that awakening in people. I would drive from way up in the other part of the reserve, drive way up there, and there would be the flags flying on this house and that house and this house. And everybody's just all alive with encouragement of taking back our land, standing up for our rights.
Wasn't just about reclaiming the land. I mean, it was a whole bigger process about revitalizing who we are as a people. It almost seemed like everybody's minds, everybody's hearts and spirit just opened right up.
We'll never give up. And maybe it won't be in my lifetime, and maybe not in my children's lifetime, but maybe in my grandchildren's lifetime or the great-grandchildren. We keep it alive and make it right.